Hello and welcome along to Matchday 26, otherwise known as the New Year edition of Championship predictions from the Honest Football Podcast. Today we are back with the games being played over the 1st and 2nd of January. It's another full Championship fixture list, and my word, were there some surprises last time out. Two things to do before we move on to our New Year predictions. First of those is to wish you all a happy new year. Thank you for your support over the past 12 months and hopefully you all have a good 2023 and fingers crossed your sides get off to a good start, unless you're a Huddersfield fan playing against my club Luton Town. But otherwise, we've got to go and have a recap of what happened last time out. And breaking news, for the first time, I've beaten you all in the comments. I managed to get 8 points in this edition, which isn't bad given the number of shocks we saw. I don't think many saw my side winning 3-0 at QPR at the start of the match day, and not many saw the Swansea 4-0 win coming at the end of it. 8 without a win, but they battered Watford. I'm not going to complain about that. But otherwise, I got a perfect score for Blackburn Rovers versus Middlesbrough, which ended 2-1 to the visitors, and 5 other perfect outcomes, some near misses on perfect scores. And in the end, I get 8 points from Matchday 25. But let's move over to the New Year edition, because I think I've learned a bit of a lesson from this week, which is we're at the end of 3 games in 6 days. There's a lot of tired legs. There's a lot of stretch squads. There's a lot of injuries in the Championship. So I think we're going to go a little bit higher scoring generally today. But the first game might be a little bit immune to that, because the early kickoff on New Year's Day is Blackburn Rovers versus Cardiff City. Cardiff have drawn all 4 games since the World Cup. The last 2 goalless draws against QPR and Coventry. You could argue not bad results given the fact that they're both playoff hopefuls. And Blackburn, they have now lost 3 in a row, including the cup tie just before Christmas. But 2 defeats against the North East opposition, Sunderland and Middlesbrough, both by 2 goals to 1. And against Middlesbrough, they well and truly shot themselves in the foot. They were brilliant in the first half, got themselves in ahead, did okay. And then at the start of the second half, it was disaster. Conceded in the first minute, silly goal to give away. Then got a red card, lack of discipline 5 minutes into the half. And then 5 minutes later, they were behind. Yes, great for Middlesbrough and Carrick, we'll talk about that later. But Blackburn are not helping themselves. And I mentioned this last time out, didn't I? They always have this wobble in the middle of the season, and this one looks to be a big one. They've now won 13, lost 12, remarkably still not drawn, and against a side that have drawn 4 in a row, it makes predictions a little bit trickier. Cardiff, on the other hand, well and truly outplayed by Coventry, but they stayed solid and Coventry couldn't find a way through. So you've got to give them credit for hanging in there and picking up points before the January window. No doubt where Mark Hudson is going to prioritise, he'll want attacking talent coming in. He'll want a bit of depth to that squad going forward. But at the back, he has made them far better and he deserves big credit for that. Cardiff, they're going to run out of steam. They can't defend like that 3 games in a row. And they have scored the least goals in the league. So Blackburn having the worst defence of the top 5 might not be as crucial in this one. Buckley's going to be a miss after a silly red card. But I'm going to back Blackburn to win. Just because they don't draw. If there is going to be one, it's probably this game. But I'm going to stick with Blackburn to win it. I'm going to go by 2-0. And the first of the 3 PM kickoffs on New Year's Day is Blackpool, second bottom of the league, against Sunderland, who are high-flying up in 4th now. Contrasting festive form for them. Sunderland brilliant in a 4-1 win away at Wigan to back up their 2-1 win against Blackburn. And it sort of panned out how we said. They were ruthless on the counter-attack. They soaked up a little bit of pressure. Wigan obviously trying to play this more possession style under Toure. And in the end, they even managed to dominate that. They're one of the most frightening sides away from home in the league when they've got things right. So really pleased to see them doing well. They're flying high in the league and they are in that playoff mix, which to be fair to Craig, he predicted at the start of the season. For Blackpool, you feel like January can't come soon enough because, yes, they lost key players on deadline date. We mentioned when Josh Bowler left the club. And since the World Cup break, they haven't won a game, haven't won in their last 6. And that one ended a run of draws at home to Sheffield United. They weren't the better side. They didn't deserve to get the result. But ultimately, their season is not going to be judged on how they play against United. The one thing I was pretty impressed with is that they kept the ball relatively well. So hopefully that will save a few of the fatigue legs. And they did manage to get one back and fight back and show some spirit after going 2 down. But Sunderland, definitely the favourites for this game. If it was the other way round, I'd probably have predicted a draw. But Sunderland on the road are ruthless. They've got brilliant attacking players that are all in form at the same time. And while I know a game like this is one that is just classic Championship and everything goes against you, I've got to go with a form book. Sunderland to win it, I'm going to go big. 3-1 for the Black Cats. And next up, we've got 2 of the sides that drew 0-0 in the last fixture list. Coventry City against Bristol City. Probably contrasting views on those draws though. Coventry were incredibly frustrated at home to Cardiff. They dominated the game, they had better chances, but they just didn't take them. And it is becoming a bit of a pattern for them. If you take out the Swansea game, only scored 2 in the other 4 of their last 5 games. Bristol City, on the other hand, probably happy to keep a clean sheet, did a really good job away at Millwall. They didn't have a shot on target against them, and Bristol City did have an occasional threat on the counter. Probably happy to be away from home given what had happened the 2 games previous, and they are another side that perhaps are starting to look a bit better on the road, which wasn't always the case earlier in the year. Coventry traditionally have been very good at home, and although they were frustrated against Cardiff, they are still keeping that unbeaten run going, and they've got a top 6 record when it comes to the Championship. Remarkably, due to the way the Championship looks, they're 14th, but only 2 points off the playoffs. I have to go for Coventry to win it. Bristol City looking over their shoulder. Again, a club that needs the January window to open. I think it will be tighter. I don't see this game being a thriller, but I'm going to go for Coventry to win it again. I'm going for the same score as the first game, 2-0. And next up, it is the game that caused me so much pain late last season. It is Huddersfield Town versus Luton Town. Luton come into this in brilliant form after the 2-1 win against Norwich with 10 men and a brilliant 3-0 win away at QPR. We'll talk more about that in a second. But Huddersfield, they're finding some form themselves. A big 2-1 win away at Preston, and then a huge result in a relegation 6-pointer, a 2-0 win at home to Rotherham. That brings them up to 22nd place and just 2 points behind. And it was only before the Boxing Day edition we were worried about them getting cut adrift. Jordan Rhodes is finding form again. Mark Fotheringham finally starting to show signs. They kept it very tight, they kept it very compact. It was probably the most Corberan-like performance we've seen under Mark Fotheringham, and given how open they've been most of the year, I don't think they'll be complaining about that too much. It does give me a bit of worry this game though, because Huddersfield obviously in April dented Luton's playoff charge at one point last year. Then when Luton made the playoffs, they beat us in the semi-final despite us dominating for 80 minutes of that game. And I just wonder if Luton having goal scorers this year will make a difference. It was the big problem last year. Adebayo was out injured. There wasn't really a great deal of centre-forward options. This year, Carlton Morris is banging form. There's goals coming from everywhere on the pitch. And Luton are starting to look very good under Rob Edwards. My head is telling me to go for 1-1 just so I don't look like I'm being biased. But I really do have a feeling Luton are going to win this. Huddersfield, maybe it's one game too far. They've got a smaller squad. They've got a weaker defence than last season. Mark Fotheringham will obviously improve in January. But I'm going to stick my neck on the line. I'm going to risk looking silly. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Luton Town away from home. And the final game on New Year's Day is Millwall versus Rotherham United. Millwall traditionally very good at home, but a very blunt performance against Bristol City in the last game. A 0-0 draw, no shots on target, and he didn't create a great deal of openings either. Now, Bristol City did set up a bit more defensively, but Millwall will be really frustrated by that. I do wonder if we're going to see them really lash out at Rotherham, who are very weak defensively. A poor result against Huddersfield, a 2-0 defeat, leaves them languishing just one place above the relegation zone. So I'm a little bit worried for them. Millwall are very strong from set pieces. They've got individual quality, as we saw against Watford the game prior. And although the goals haven't been flowing for them, they may be still missing that top quality 25 goal a season striker. They have got goals from midfield. Rotherham leaked them from everywhere. It's now, 10 in their last 4 games, and 3 of those 4 sides are those they'd expect to be in and around them at the end of the season in Huddersfield, Bristol City and Stoke. So there's a lot of defensive worries. They're not really scoring many either. Rotherham need January and they need some clever recruitment. For this one, I know they were held up last time, but Millwall are going to win it. I'm certain of that. I actually think this could be a really big scoreline if they score early. It's going to be how much Rotherham can frustrate them. We've seen them do it at the likes of Sheffield United and Luton this year and hold teams to 1. But I'm going to go big. I think Millwall will score in the first 20 minutes and they'll go on to win by 3-0. On to Monday, and the first of the 7 games is a 3 p.m. kickoff between Birmingham City and Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough absolutely flying and bounce back with another 2-1 win away at Blackburn. They went a goal down, but after half-time, tell you what, Carrick must have had a word with them because they were brilliant for 15 minutes, and after the red card, it almost became a formality. That's 5 wins in 6 for them. The only team they haven't beaten in that run is Burnley, who are top of the league by a mile. And Birmingham, really disappointing against Hull City. Back-to-back defeats. Again, the Burnley game you're not going to judge too much on. But at home to Hull, they're the sorts of games you've got to pick up results, because now they've allowed Hull back within 2 points. They're looking over their shoulder. It's only 7 points and Huddersfield have a game in hand. So there is going to be a little bit of concern there for John Eustace. But overall, they have had a decent season. Lots of people, including me, expected them to be in that bottom 3, and they've been far clear of it so far. So credit for that. But he's not going to want this winless run to continue too long. It's 3 of the last 4 games since the break they haven't scored in as well, which is a worry given the attacking options they've got. I'm not sure about this. I think Borough are going to win it. They're so good at the moment. And it's another one of those where you've got to go with the form book. Birmingham will sit deep, which is fine, but Borough will come on to them. And they've got individual quality. Ryan Giles pushes up on the left. Jones is high on the right. They've got quality in the middle. And they're going to get the ball in the box. And with the players scoring at the rate they are, Force, Akpom, whoever it may be up there, they're going to pop up with goals. So I think Birmingham will sit and almost play like an away game. I'm not sure it's going to work. I think it might be a bit tighter, but I'm going to go for 2-0 to Middlesbrough. And the next one is a battle between 2 of last year's relegated Premier League sides, and I don't think many would have had these two 5th and 7th at the start of the season. It's Norwich City versus Watford, and it's been a disappointing week for both. Norwich, you thought would be buoyed, and we predicted it last time out, would be buoyed by the fact that Dean Smith had lost his job. The fans had turned against him by the end. But what I didn't expect before that game against Reading was for them to contact Steve Bruce, which has put the fans on the back foot again, because they're thinking, well, this is a manager who put West Brom in a relegation zone, and they're worried about him coming back now. So it's led to a little bit of jeopardy again. It wasn't as raucous an atmosphere as you might have expected. It was a more inventive performance from them. I wouldn't say they created tons of openings, but they were a bit more front-footed generally. So slightly encouraging signs, but nowhere near enough, if we're being honest. On the other hand, I've got to say the same thing again, and I always try, because of the Luton link, to be very overcautious when I'm talking about Watford and not give them too much stick. But I did mention it in the last game against Millwall. After they went down to 10 men, they didn't look like they were up for the fight, and it is something that was levelled at the Watford squad when they came down last year and a couple of times this season as well. And what happened in the second half of that 4-0 defeat at Swansea was bordering on disgraceful. I mean, they didn't show any fight to get back into the game anyway, but once the second went in, they collapsed. The third and fourth goal, you saw runners not being tracked into the box, people not being followed from midfield. It was pretty frightening to watch if you're a Watford fan, and Slaven Bilic, he's going to need to bounce back soon, because we've seen what Watford are like. They're very volatile with managers, and as much as I'm a big Bilic admirer, he is going to need to turn it round. They've got to say it's a mitigating circumstance that 5 or 6 players are injured. They have got half a first 11 out, but you would expect more from Watford. They've got a strong squad, and the 11 that was out on the pitch should have been competing at championship level. So their transfer window is probably going to be one of the most interesting ones for me. They were firmly beaten by Swansea. They've got to at least show a bit of defensive guile and try and find those 4 clean sheets they had in succession prior. But after 6 goals conceded in 2, I just wonder if Norwich can find a way to announce a new manager before the game or on the pitch, whatever it might be, because that will give the fans a real lift. If it's Steve Bruce, it might turn a few heads, but either way, it might get a reaction from the players. I genuinely don't know what to predict for this game. They're both in awful form, but I think, given the way that Watford have lost the last 2, I'm going to have to go for Norwich. They're going to nick it by 2-1. They're going to end their winless run, and just maybe they'll have a new manager sitting in the stands too. On to the next of the 3 p.m. kickoffs. It is Stoke City versus Preston North End. Preston at risk of the wheels coming off the wagon. That is 3 defeats in a row now and down to 15th place. A 2-0 defeat at West Brom. They were firmly outplayed. West Brom created chances galore, and if I'm being honest, it probably should have been more. I'd argue West Brom had 4 or 5 very good chances in that game, and Preston didn't create an awful lot at all. So very lucky to come out with a 2-0 defeat, and after the loss at home to QPR, after the loss at home to Huddersfield, who were bottom at the time, it has been a very bad festive period so far. Can they salvage something against Stoke though? Because for as decent as they were against Burnley, they gave them a really good game. It was a pretty even game in fairness. The goal they gave away was so clumsy at the back. Defender clearing it against the goalkeeper, bobbling around in the 6-yard box, and then no one reacting to the loose ball. It just sort of summed up Stoke's season so far. Clumsy, lethargic, and not quite there. They're wasting chances at the other end, which is a shame given the attacking talent they've got. And after scoring 2 in each of the previous 3 games, it is a big worry that they're conceding and not scoring goals. They've got the 3rd worst home record in the league, which you would never have expected a few years ago at Stoke City. Preston on the road have been much better this year, and I'm going to go for them to salvage something out of this break. I don't think they're going to go and get the win, but I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. 1 goal apiece, it could go either way, so I'm afraid I have to sit on the fence. On to the leaders, Burnley. They travel to Swansea City on the 2nd of January. Swansea, of course, buoyed by that brilliant 4-0 win against Watford. I don't think anyone saw that coming after 8 without a win. Watford lied down in the second half and let them have their way with them, but you've got to say, Swansea looked very good on the counter. A clean sheet almost as exciting because they'd been awful defensively the 2 games before. But the goal-scoring threat is a very good thing for Swansea. Joel Pirro on his day is one of the best strikers in the Championship, and they were creating chances everywhere. So a brilliant performance for them. Watford just couldn't handle it defensively. However, Burnley are going to be a very different proposition. They will fight for everything. They will press relentlessly and they will take the ball off Swansea. It's going to be a really interesting balance of styles. You've got Swansea who love to keep possession, love to keep the ball moving at a pace, and then Burnley who love to press and counter very quickly. This is going to be a real clash, but you've got to back Burnley. They're up at the top of the league. 53 points. They've only lost 2 all season. They've been in brilliant form. 5 wins in a row. This was the first of them where they hadn't scored 3 in the game. But I'm going to bank on them to score 3 at Swansea because they are very susceptible defensively when they concede. And if they let in an early goal and have to come out a bit, it's going to be a long day. I just fancy Burnley's pace on the counter. They've got a focal point in whichever man they choose up front. I'm going for Burnley to win it by 3-1 and to keep their lead at the top of the table. Albeit they were relatively fortunate to beat Stoke. 3 to go. The first of them is West Bromwich Albion versus Reading. West Brom continue their bounce under Carlos Corberán. 1 point off the playoffs now. No one would have seen that coming a few weeks back. A 2-0 win against Preston, and I think the only disappointment in truth will be that they didn't get 3, 4 or 5. They had so many chances. It was going forward probably one of their best performances of the season. Certainly under Corberán, they look really aggressive and they've got that discipline at the back. It's 3 clean sheets in 4, 3 in their last 3 home games. They just look brilliant. And I know Reading got a good point at Norwich, a late equaliser from Andy Carroll from the penalty spot. Great to see him fit, playing regularly and scoring goals. You've got to say that. But Reading have been worse away from home this year. They've still got the 2nd worst away record in the league. They've conceded the most goals of any team away from home. And if West Brom get going, and if they create the chances they did last time, there's no way they're only scoring 2 again. I've got a feeling with Reading's ageing squad and it being the 3rd game in 6 days, this is one of those that could get quite ugly. It's not going to define Reading's season, and there's a very good chance of me looking wrong and them drawing 0-0. But I'm going to go for West Brom to hammer them. I'm going to go bold on this one. I'm going to go 4-0. I think West Brom, if they play like they did last time, they'll score bucket loads because they created so many chances. And the last of the 3 PM kickoffs is another relegation 6-pointer. Wigan Athletic against Hull City. What a crucial win for Hull away at Birmingham. 1-0. Again, I've mentioned it a few times. They've been so much more solid defensively under Liam Rosenior. No defeat since the World Cup break. Only 2 goals conceded in the 4 games. And albeit they've played some of the sides around them, they've taken advantage and got results. So a really crucial win for them to give them a little 5-point buffer. I would expect 1 or 2 additions in the January window. And Estupiñán, you've got to give him credit. He scores goals whenever he's fit. It's just about getting him service regularly. On the other hand, Wigan are all over the place. Under Kolo Touré, trying to play a bit more of a possession game. I'm not sure the players have fully bought into it. The performance at Millwall was very good. Since then, it's been poor. The fans are starting to turn a little bit, and they were thoroughly outplayed by Sunderland. It's going to be a big window for Wigan. They've got to get players in early, and I wonder if Kolo Touré's been working on that in the background because it wasn't a busy enough summer. We said they were a little light going forward, but they've got just as many problems at the back for now. 4 goals conceded in both of their last 2 games, 2 in the one before that against Sheffield United, and it's 14 in their last 6 in total, and they're not scoring enough to combat that. Wigan's still the worst home team in the Championship. I can't give them a chance in this game, and I think Hull might even score more than 1 because Wigan have been so poor defensively, they're going to offer them a chance. They've let in 24 in their 13 home games. Hull, when they're at their best, they're very good defensively. Liam Rosenior deserves credit for what he's done at the back for them, and I'm going to predict him to keep another clean sheet. But this time, they're going to win by 2-0. And the final game is on Monday evening. It is QPR versus Sheffield United. Sheffield United make it 5 wins in a row, 4 in a row since the World Cup break. They go 11 points clear of Blackburn in third with a 2-1 win against Blackpool, and QPR lost 3-0 at home to Luton Town. Of course, as a Luton fan, I was thrilled to see the result, but you've got to say it probably wasn't a 3-0 game. Some quality finishing from Luton, a classic away performance, and you have got to say QPR had one or two good chances, but they had a lot of possession, they kept the ball well. They weren't able to convert that into lots of chances though, and given how strong QPR normally are at home, that will be a big concern. For Critchley, it's going to be all about January, plugging those one or two gaps in the squad, trying to make them a bit more tactically solid, and at least after this game, there's just the FA Cup match for a 2-week period, so it does give him a chance to work on a training ground, and I think we'll see a very different side after that. But what you don't want in a game before it is to play one of the two runaway leaders at the top. Sheffield United, they weren't brilliant against Blackpool, but it was a ruthless counter-attacking away performance. It's exactly what we've come to expect from them. They've got a goal threat everywhere. It's why I predicted them to win the league at the start of the season. Yes, you've got 2 or 3 very good strikers when they're in form, but the goals from midfield, McAtee, Sander, Berger, the 2 that popped up last week, what a performance, what a result. They are absolutely flying and they don't concede many goals. They've got the best defensive record in the league, only 22 conceded. Them and Burnley, the only 2 that have conceded less than 1 a game. And I'm going to bank on them to get a result here. I think it will be close. I think it will be a tight game. But I'm going to finish with the same scoreline for Sheffield United, a 2-1 win away at QPR. And let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted for Matchday 26, the New Year edition of Championship predictions. I've gone for a couple of big home wins in this one. 3-0 for Millwall at home to Rotherham United and 4-0 for West Bromwich Albion at home to Reading. I know there's a couple of surprises in there. I've gone for my club Luton to make it 3 in a row away at Huddersfield and get revenge for the playoff semi-final last year. And Sheffield United and Burnley both to keep pace at the top of the league. But those are my predictions for Matchday 26. Do you agree with them or disagree with them? Let me know in the comment section and give us your predictions for Matchday 26. If you did enjoy the video, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. Keep your eyes peeled for a very special interview coming later in the week. Maybe some FA Cup live action as well. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with Championship predictions again. A happy new year to all of you. I hope you have a great 2023. Thank you very much for watching as always. We'll see you here again next time.